Before I could drive a car, I drove a snowmobile. I was lucky enough that when I was a kid, my parents owned a small mom and pop motel. They owned and operated it, and we lived in the back of it called the Skylark Motel. And my dad had an old 89 Indy 400, and I used to ride that snowmobile laps around the motel. Me and my friends, we'd burn a whole gas tank just driving circles around the hotel. And when I was 14, my dad let me take the sled and ride over to my friend's house. And I just thought I was living the good life, driving around as a 14-year-old kid on this snowmobile all by myself. But when I heard of this story, the Phantom Snowmobiler, I had never heard of it before in my entire life. So I thought it was really cool, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So here it is, the story of the Phantom Snowmobiler. The Phantom Snowmobiler, from the book Northern Frights by Dennis Boyer. This story is told to the author by an ex-Marine that he met at a bar. I didn't believe in ghosts before. I probably still wouldn't give a crap if I hadn't run into the one we have up here. They call him the Phantom Snowmobiler. People started talking about him about 10 years ago. Back then, people saw him running late at night on Highway J out towards Pickerel Lake. I remember thinking that the taverns were using the cheap stuff in those Corbel bottles when I heard the story the first time. But then about 2 years later, I saw it for myself. A bunch of us were on Woodruff Road south of Hemlock Lake, and an old clunker Articat pulled out of the gravel pit road and almost wiped me out. It was the most beat-up piece of crap I'd ever seen. But when I tried to catch up to it, he left me eating snow. He must have hit 100 miles per hour by the time he got to the straightaway on Highway 47. Then he doubled back on Mid-Lake Road. When we met for a beer and pee break down in Lake Tomahawk, the others told me that it was the ghost. I told them that no dead snowmobiler was going to get the better of me. So I set out to try to catch him. I saw him 2 or 3 times a winter for about 5 years. Chased him all the way to McNaughton one time. He ran me off the trail twice, dumped me off a bridge once, and led me out on a thin ice on Lake Minocqua one time. He made it across and I didn't. I was fit to be tied. I wanted a piece of him in the worst way. Then a funny thing happened. I stopped chasing the ghost and he started finding me. Yeah, he's riding along just ahead of me, sometimes alongside of me. This is when I started to get a good look at him. I think I'm about the only one who spent that much time close to him. Others have described his old Articat Snowmasher, and I can vouch for its crappy looks, but I'd swear that thing could leave Woodruff and make the North Pole in 36 hours. The ghost himself is a throwback. No fancy clothes or boots, no shiny helmet. He's wearing a gray, greasy, insulated coveralls with a GI ear flap on his head and buckled overshoes on his feet. But when you get up close, you notice something startling real quick. You look at his face, and there is none. Yeah, just a blank space under the visor of that cap. So there's no talk, no eye contact to give you signals. About all I could ever figure from him was his hands. Sometimes he'd point, sometimes he'd wave at you, and sometimes he'd stick his mitten thumb up at you. His old snowbeater had an odd sound for a snowmobile of that age. You know, the new ones kind of have a high-pitched whine, and the older ones sound like a big chainsaw sawing through a railroad tie. But the ghost snow machine kind of sounded like just a hum, almost like it was running on electric or something. People up here don't want the story to be told. They don't want to scare the tourists, you know. Don't you know it's bad for business at bars and resorts? But I know that if you follow the patterns, you can find omens. The ghost has blocked trails, and those who went around him later found themselves through the ice. He tried to run some drunk punks off of Highway 47 to save them, but one of those fools gave an electric pole a 60-mile-per-hour kiss, so I know he's trying to tell us to tone it down. I like to wail on my machine as much as the next guy, and I've been known to fuel myself on a bottle of brandy and a 12-pack, so by the time bar time comes, I'm twice the legal limit. But I know the trails, and I know what I'm doing. What we're getting up here now is a lot of Milwaukee and Chicago rum-dums that can barely find their way around the trails. They get on their high-performance machines, which they have no practice driving, and then they drink double of what they think they can handle. Then they go straight into the woods and ride on trails that they have no experience on, and they think the whole Northwoods is just an open park for them to party in. The idea of guide wires, private line cables, and barbed wire fences are totally beyond their brain capacity. They're surprised when they get decapitated or have their skull bashed in. They're shocked when they trespass and cross private land and end up cracked up on somebody's foundation hole. I actually think the ghost is trying to stop it, but maybe all those other dead snow jockeys that left ghosts are working against him. We better help him out, or there's going to be a snowmobile ghost at every intersection from Stevens Point all the way up to Woodruff.